have no idea where this is.
The killing that changed it all.
It was a circus. It was unlike any other case.
And now all of a sudden your wife's missing? Are you kidding me?
You think I had something to do with her disappearance?
And the developments happening over 15 years later. It's Christmas Eve 2002. Ron Gransky informs police that his pregnant stepdaughter has disappeared.
We took her dog for a walk in the park. The dog came home with just the leash on.
That missing woman was 27-year-old Laci Peterson. Her husband was 29-year-old fertilizer salesman Scott Peterson. After Laci vanished, Scott sits down with police.
Just tell me about the morning. I got up at, 8 o'clock probably or so. Showered. We were watching her favorite show, Martha Stewart.
According to Scott, unlike what Gransky had told police, he didn't golf that day. He says it was too cold and instead decided to go fishing.
When did you realize you were going to go fishing? Oh, that was a morning decision. It seemed too cold to go play golf at the club, so.
You're telling me that it was too cold to golf, but yet you decided to go fishing in an open boat, in open water, out there in that bay where arguably is one of the coldest places and uncomfortable places that you could possibly be, in hopes that you're actually going to catch something.
How long do you think you stayed in the water? Felt like an hour and a half or so. Okay, so then what? You drive home. Mm-hmm. See your dog out there? Yeah. And he still have his leash on? Mm-hmm. Were you calling for Laci or? Oh yeah, of course.
Although Scott himself participated in the investigation and search efforts, many people believed he seemed a bit off.
Hey, sweetheart, Scott here.
In a stunning revelation, a 27-year-old massage therapist named Amber Fry comes forward in January 2003 and admits she was having an affair with Scott.
You guys didn't have any problems, marriage problems. Everything's good. Mm-hmm.
What Scott didn't know was that when the news of Laci's disappearance hit the headlines, Fry began to work with police and recorded her calls with Scott. In one of the most shocking moments, while at a vigil for Laci, listen to where Scott says he is.
Amber. Hey, Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year.
I'm near the Eiffel Tower. New Year's celebration is unreal. The crowd is huge. It's pretty awesome. Fireworks and everything for the Eiffel Tower.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you guys decided to go out.
See, we're staying. Sorry, Amber. I have not been traveling during the last couple weeks. I've lied to you that I've been traveling.
Okay.
The girl I got married to, her name is Laci.
Mm-hmm.
Not only had Scott lied about his marriage to Laci, he even told Amber he was a widower.
You deserve so much better.
Yeah, and I deserve to understand an explanation of why you told me you had lost your wife and this was the first holidays you'd spend without her. That was December 9th. You told me this, and now all of a sudden your wife's missing? Are you kidding me?
I don't know what to say.
Of course you couldn't tell me the story about your wife because it hadn't happened yet. And you were hoping to resolve in January that it'd be resolved and you'd have a story to tell me.
You think I had something to do with her disappearance?
Well, let's see. How can I believe that? How can I believe that? How could I believe anything for...
I am not evil like that.
I would hope not.
I am... Oh, my God.
You've lied.
For Scott Peterson, this was only the start of his problems. In April 2003, the whole case changed. The bodies of Laci and her unborn son Connor are found. The bodies were found washed up in the San Francisco Bay, only a few miles from the Berkeley Marina, a location that was very problematic for Scott.
When you got in your boat and you took off, did you go very far? Or? Well, I mean, probably a couple miles. I went north. I just assumed it would be a decent, shallow area.
In fact, canine dogs tracked Laci's scent to the Berkeley Marina. Yet there was a major issue for investigators. Not only could authorities not pinpoint how or even where Laci was killed, but no murder weapon was ever recovered. In fact, there was no significant forensic evidence connecting Scott to the murders.
Okay, so then what? You drive home. Okay, what do you do when you go in?
Put my clothes in the washer.
Okay, then what?
However, authorities did find a few things. A comforter from the Peterson home stained with what appeared to be small blood spots. Additionally, hairs consistent with Laci's were found on a pair of pliers recovered from Scott's boat.
Well, the reason I went was just to get that boat in the water to see, yeah.
Law enforcement discovered something else. There was evidence that Scott had made 5 cement anchors, but only one was on his boat. On June 1st, 2004, the trial of Scott Peterson began, the man accused of murdering his pregnant wife Laci and their unborn son Connor back in December 2002. The defense had a huge advantage: no confession, no witnesses, no murder weapon, and no evidence of how or where Laci was killed. Peterson's legal team also had an alternative theory of what happened, which was tied to a burglary across the street from the Peterson home. The prosecution was armed with circumstantial evidence, from authorities discovering the bodies in the very area where Scott had claimed he had gone boating, to when Amber Fry, Scott's mistress, the woman he had lied to and had cheated on Laci with, took the stand. After a 6-month-long trial and days of deliberations, the jury convicted Scott Peterson of the murders of Laci and Connor, and he was ultimately sentenced to death. The story, though, is not over. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned Scott Peterson's death sentence. Yet life in prison without the possibility of parole may not be the automatic future for Scott. At the time of this recording, there's a chance his convictions could be thrown out too, and he may receive a whole new trial. A new trial for Scott Peterson would be interesting, especially since Scott's sister-in-law, Janie Peterson, has been adamant that she has new evidence proving his innocence, namely that Laci was alive when Scott left the house.
At the time of this taping, it's still up in the air. The question of if Scott's the real killer and what exactly happened to Laci and Connor, that is one that continues to be debated and thought about even after all these years.